In the frozen, unforgiving wetlands of Hokkaido, the margin between profound beauty and sudden death is razor thin. For this lifelong pair, surviving the deep winter requires a breathtaking, exhaustive ritual. But as their magnificent snow ballet begins, they are being watched, and before dusk falls, their devotion will be tested in blood. In the remote, freezing depths of northern Japan lies a realm sculpted by ice and absolute isolation. The Hokkaido wetlands reveal their stark, unforgiving beauty as the pale blue hues of a deeply frozen twilight bleed across the horizon. It is a world composed of pristine powder, misty, icy rivers, and skeletal birch trees heavily encased in crystalline frost. In the biting stillness, the incredibly diverse ecosystem slowly awakens. A massive Blakiston's fish owl blinks into the fading darkness, its silent vigil ending. On the snowy banks, a tiny northern pika sniffs the frigid air, while graceful whooper swans navigate the dark, jagged ice of the slow-moving river. At the heart of this frozen sanctuary rests a story of unparalleled devotion. A pair of magnificent red-crowned cranes awakens to the extreme cold. Standing over 5 feet tall, their stark white plumage and elegant black feathers contrast vividly against the endless winter canvas. This lifelong breeding pair meticulously turns their perfectly camouflaged, fragile, speckled eggs. As a solitary Sika deerbuck heavily through the frozen crust, the massive male crane carefully preens his mate. A majestic Steller sea eagle watches from an icy branch above. A vibrant common kingfisher dives into the freezing waters. A fluffy red squirrel vigorously shakes the heavy night's frost from its bright fur. Above, a thick-furred Japanese macaque watches intently from a pine tree. The cranes return to the sweeping open plains for one of the most spectacular displays in the natural world. A staggering, deafening bugle call echoes. The female answers immediately. A breathtaking, perfectly harmonic duet. They stand face to face, bowing deeply. Then, with an explosion of pure physical power, the male leaps high into the freezing sky. His devoted mate instantly mirrors him. They hover together above the pristine powder, executing an ethereal snow ballet. Ripping clumps of packed snow, they toss them joyfully into the biting wind. A camouflaged mountain hare watches silently. This magnificent mating display is vital psychological armor binding them against the relentless hardships of the biome. As they return to their freezing nest, a plump hazel grouse scurries through the underbrush. By midday, the flat, oppressive light casts no shadows. A blinding plain of solid ice. Extreme hunger is the most ruthless master here. Beneath the skeletal birch forest, a massive usuri brown bear slumbers in the deep snow. But another lethal predator is wide awake, an apex predator on the hunt. Driven by sheer starvation, a cunning Ezo Red Fox materializes from the dark tree line. Its bright orange fur cuts a terrifying streak across the pristine white powder. Every step is silent, meticulous, deadly. A terrified Japanese raccoon dog flattens itself against the snow, avoiding the predator's path. The starving fox locks its glowing amber eyes onto the vulnerable nest. But the male crane is an incredibly hyper-vigilant sentinel. He leaves his incubating mate. He steps directly into the open snow. A massive, intimidating wall of stark white and black. A heavy, suffocating winter fog rolls slowly across the endless plains. A terrifying standoff ensues. The fox bares its incredibly sharp white teeth. It takes a slow, agonizing step forward. High above, a stoic Japanese sero watches the brutal survival drama from a snowy mountain ridge. The male crane refuses to yield an inch. He stomps his giant claw heavily into the frozen ice. Absolute dominance. Spear-like beak pointing downward with lethal intent. He emits a terrifying, rapid, hollow, clicking sound. A bone-chilling mechanical rattle, vibrating ominously through the thick air. The desperate fox attempts to circle. The giant crane pivots flawlessly. Suddenly, the desperate fox launches a lunging attack. The heroic male crane counterattacks, thrusting his neck forward like a spear. A violent explosion of white powder fills the air. The startled fox scrambles backward frantically, narrowly escaping the razor-sharp strike. The intense standoff stretches into the grueling hours of the afternoon. The defeated fox sits in the deep snow. Desperate patience. The male crane's endurance is absolute. He stands motionless. Heavy, freezing frost accumulates thickly on his majestic wings. Nearby, vibrant mandarin ducks bathe peacefully, completely oblivious to the life or death struggle. Finally, the starving fox turns away. The calorie cost is far too high. The intense adrenaline finally fades from the landscape. The male crane forcefully shakes the thick ice from his feathers and returns to his loyal mate. In a profoundly touching display of pure tenderness, he gently preens the feathers on the back of her neck. It is in these quiet moments that the profound fragility of this ecosystem reveals itself. These breathtaking birds, universal symbols of fidelity and luck, rely entirely on these shrinking, isolated wetlands. Every freezing breath they share, every fragile, speckled egg they fiercely protect, is a critical victory for their kind. Their exhausting struggle is the very heartbeat of a species clinging to the edge of the world. A tiny Siberian flying squirrel watches carefully from a frosted tree knot as the deeply bonded pair swaps incubation duties. The male carefully lowers his massive body onto the fragile speckled eggs. But the Hokkaido wilderness is a landscape of sudden, violent extremes. As the afternoon light wanes, a brutal winter squall violently tears across the open plains. A nervous herd of Sika deer tightly groups together against the stinging, blinding snow. The male crane, acting as an unbreakable shield for the next generation, is rapidly buried under a thick layer of wet snow. He completely refuses to abandon his future. Seeing his immense distress, the devoted female rushes back from the river. She steps directly upwind, leaning her massive frame entirely into the freezing wind to create a physical, feathery windbreak for her partner. Avian reproduction here demands unparalleled sacrifice. They weather the howling, terrifying blizzard together, their biological resilience a stunning testament to the sheer power of their lifelong connection. As the violent storm finally breaks, the freezing wetlands are transformed by the breathtaking beauty of the pale golden hour. A Steller's sea eagle lands heavily on a frosted branch as the endless plains glitter fiercely with millions of ice crystals. The female crane returns to the nest, while the male stands incredibly tall beside her. Their synchronized breaths create glowing golden clouds of steam. The sky shifts into a sweeping canvas of soft pinks, purples, and deep blues. A family of Japanese macaques huddles tightly together for vital warmth against the incredible pink sky. But as the deeply blue, frozen night rapidly approaches, the fragile peace is shattered. Driven to the absolute brink of starvation, the desperate Ezo Red Fox creeps back out of the deep shadows for one final, terrifying twilight attack. This time, the male crane does not stand alone. The female explodes upward from the nest. She rushes forward to stand perfectly shoulder to shoulder with her lifelong mate. Together, they form an impenetrable, terrifyingly large, white wall in the darkening snow. They step perfectly in sync, stomping the ice, jabbing their dual beaks forward simultaneously. The entirely panicked fox, completely overwhelmed by their unified power, scrambles frantically backward, slipping violently on the icy crust. The female's beak snaps shut with incredible velocity, generating a massive shockwave of air. The defeated predator limps away into the dark, silent forest forever. A massive Blakiston's fish owl glides silently away from the commotion. The victorious red-crowned cranes stand proudly together in the incredibly dark, freezing snow. They belt out an absolutely massive, harmonic victory bugle that echoes for miles across the empty ice. As the icy nightfall completely consumes the landscape, the deeply devoted pair sleeps tightly intertwined, sharing vital body heat beneath the stars. An unbreakable monument to winter survival. As twilight settles over the ice, this pair has survived another brutal day, their bond unbroken. But just across the globe, in the suffocating heat of a monsoon jungle, a completely different breeding pair faces an invisible, cold-blooded assassin. To witness that desperate fight for survival, click the video on your screen now.